Alexa Sayers craved a simpler life. The city had worn her down.
I dreamed of a life lived at a slower pace. A life where the only demands were the gentle rocking of a boat and the whisper of the wind.
And so she bought a narrowboat. Alexa named her boat the River's Whisper, a symbol of the peace she sought.
I packed my belongings, said goodbye to the city, and set off on my adventure. The city, with its noise and its demands, receded into the distance. Ahead lay the promise of peace, of solitude, of a life lived on my own terms. This was my dream, and I was finally living it.
The River's Whisper was a traditional narrowboat, painted a deep, calming blue. Its cabin, small but cozy, was Alexa's new home. She had lovingly decorated it with warm colours, soft blankets and potted plants. Bookshelves lined one wall filled with novels, poetry collections and travelogues. The boat was more than just a vessel to Alexa. It was a refuge, a sanctuary. Alexa had chosen the narrowboat lifestyle for its solitude. The gentle rocking of the boat on the water, the sound of birdsong, the whisper of the wind through the trees. These were the sounds she craved. As Alexa steered the River's Whisper along the tranquil waterways, she felt a sense of peace settle over her, a feeling that she was finally home. The canals of England were a world apart, a hidden network of waterways weaving through the heart of the country. They snaked through ancient forests and rolling farmland, past quaint villages and bustling market towns. For centuries, these canals were the lifeblood of England, transporting goods and people across the country. Now, they offered a different kind of journey, a journey of peace, of solitude, of a slower pace of life. Alexa felt a sense of awe as she steered her narrowboat along these historic waterways. She imagined the generations of boatmen who had travelled these same waters, their lives so different from her own. The canals were a world of their own, a hidden gem in the heart of England. As Alexa journeyed deeper into this world, she felt a sense of peace wash over her, a sense of belonging, a feeling that she had finally found her place in the world. The sun climbed higher in the sky, casting a golden glow on the water. Alexa steered the River's Whisper along a particularly picturesque stretch of canal, a sense of contentment washing over her.
I had been on the canals for a week, and each day had brought new joys. I delighted in the simple pleasures of life on the water, the morning mist rising from the canals, the ducks paddling alongside my boat, the evenings spent moored beneath a canopy of stars.
But as the day wore on, a subtle shift occurred. The sun, previously warm and inviting, now seemed to cast an unsettling glare on the water. The air, once fresh and invigorating, now felt heavy, almost oppressive.
I tried to shake off the unease that had settled over me.
The silence was the first thing that truly alarmed her. The once familiar sounds of the canal, the birdsong, the rustling leaves, the gentle lapping of water against the hull of the boat had vanished.
Rounding a bend, I noticed an abandoned narrowboat, its paint peeling, its mooring lines trailing in the water. It listed slightly to one side, as if hastily abandoned. I slowed the River's Whisper, my pulse quickening. Had something happened? Was someone in trouble?
Her initial instinct was to help, but a growing sense of unease held her back. She continued down the canal, her gaze scanning the banks, searching for any sign of life.
Then I saw it. Another abandoned boat. This one run aground on the opposite bank. This wasn't normal. Something was terribly wrong.
Fear, cold and sharp, shot through Alexa. This wasn't right. None of it was right. She had to get out of there, find somewhere safe.
Heart pounding, I spun the River's Whisper around, pushing the engine to its limits. I needed to reach the nearest town, find help, find out what was going on.
As she navigated a sharp bend, a figure stumbled out of the trees lining the towpath. It moved with an unnatural gait, jerky and uncoordinated. Its clothes were torn, its skin pallid and clammy, but it was the eyes that truly terrified her, vacant, soulless, filled with a hunger that chilled her to the bone.
And then I saw it. The blood staining its teeth, the flesh hanging from its jaw. This was no ordinary person, this was something far more terrifying.
Alexa slammed the throttle forward, her mind reeling. The creature, drawn by the sound of the engine, lurched towards the canal bank, its moans growing louder, more insistent. The narrowboat surged forward, but it wasn't enough. The creature, its moans echoing across the water, was gaining on her. Alexa's heart pounded in her chest, a frantic drumbeat against her ribs.
She risked a glance over her shoulder. More figures emerged from the tree line, drawn by the sound of the engine, their moans a gruesome chorus. Panic swelled in my chest, threatening to overwhelm me.
But the narrow canal offered no escape, its banks closing in like a trap. The first of the creatures reached the canal bank, its outstretched hand just missing the stern of the boat.
The creature, its balance unsteady, toppled into the water with a splash.
Just when Alexa thought all hope was lost, a voice cut through the chaos.
Over here, head for the boathouse.
Alexa looked up. A weathered boathouse, its paint peeling, its windows boarded up, stood on the opposite bank. Steering with a desperate hope, Alexa guided the narrowboat towards the jetty. As she drew closer, she saw the man more clearly. He was tall and wiry, his clothes torn and dirty, his eyes hardened with a weariness that spoke of unimaginable horrors.
Get them inside, quickly, before they reach us.
The narrowboat slammed against the wooden jetty, the impact jolting Alexa to her core. She scrambled out, fear lending her a strength she didn't know she possessed.
Inside, now!
He barked, ushering her and the woman and child towards the boathouse. They stumbled inside, the heavy wooden door slamming shut behind them. The sound of their pursuers, their moans echoing in the confined space, seemed amplified, closer than ever.
We need to barricade the door, those things, they won't stop.
He trailed off, shaking his head, his face grim. The woman, her voice trembling, spoke for the first time.
What's happening? What are they?
The man hesitated, then sighed.
We barely made it out of the village. I don't know, but they're everywhere.
He turned to Alexa, his gaze sharp and assessing.
You? Where did you come from?
I was on my boat. I didn't know.
Nick?
The man said, stepping forward, extending his hand.
And this is Emily and her son, Toby.
The silence within the boathouse was heavy, broken only by the occasional moan from outside and Toby's soft whimpers. Nick moved with a practiced efficiency, dragging heavy barrels and crates to barricade the door. Alexa watched him, a strange mix of fear and admiration stirring within her. Emily sat on an upturned crate, her arms wrapped tightly around Toby.
We're safe here. For now, at least. Those things, they're drawn to sound, to movement. As long as we stay quiet, we should be okay.
His words were meant to be reassuring, but his tone was laced with an underlying tension that belied his confidence. The weight of his words settled over them, heavy and suffocating, safe for now, as long as they stayed quiet. The reality of their situation crashed over Alexa like a wave, cold and relentless.
What are they?
No one knows. They appeared a few weeks ago. First it was just rumors, stories from the cities. Then they reached the villages. Everything changed so quickly.
We were at home. Toby was playing in the garden. Then we heard the screams. People running, shouting. It was chaos.
She shuddered, pulling Toby closer.
We were lucky to get out. Many didn't.
An uneasy silence descended upon them, broken only by the soft creaking of the boathouse and the distant moans of the creatures beyond its walls. They were strangers, thrown together by circumstance, united by fear and a desperate need to survive.
We need a plan. We can't stay here forever.
His voice, though still rough, held a note of determination that sparked a flicker of hope within Alexa.
Where can we go? Everywhere we've seen.
She trailed off, unable to voice the horror they had witnessed.
The canals. They're our best bet. We can use my boat, the River's Whisper. It's small, maneuverable. We can travel by water, avoid the roads.
Nick considered this, his gaze sharp and assessing.
It's risky, but it might just work. The canals are less populated, less likely to attract those things.
He glanced at Toby, who had finally fallen asleep, his small chest rising and falling with each peaceful breath.
We need to get him somewhere safe.
They found refuge as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, eerie shadows across the water. An old lock, its mechanisms rusted and silent, lay nestled in a forgotten corner of the canal network. Overgrown with weeds and shrouded by a canopy of trees, it felt strangely removed from the horror they had witnessed, a pocket of stillness in a world gone mad.
It feels different here, almost peaceful but in a haunting way.
The boathouse had offered a brief respite, a chance to catch their breath and take stock of their situation. But it was no place to stay. Too exposed, too close to the scenes of chaos they were desperate to leave behind. They needed to find somewhere more secluded, somewhere to hide, to regroup, to plan their next move. The lock, with its air of forgotten tranquility, seemed as good a place as any.
We can't stay here long, it's too open, we need to keep moving.
As Nick steered the river's whisper through the narrow channel leading to the lock gates, a sense of unease settled over Alexa. The silence was too profound, broken only by the gentle lapping of water against the hull of the boat and the rustle of leaves in the wind. It felt like the silence of a world holding its breath, waiting for something terrible to happen.
Let's just get through the night. We'll figure out the rest in the morning.
They moored the boat in the shadow of the old lockkeeper's cottage, its windows dark and empty. The air grew heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, a smell that spoke of autumn, of endings, of things coming to an end. The long night stretched before them, punctuated by the eerie hooting of owls and the distant barking of dogs. The sounds, once comforting reminders of the natural world, now seemed laced with menace, as if the creatures themselves were infected by the same darkness that had descended upon humanity.
I can't shake this feeling. Every sound feels like a threat.
They took turns keeping watch, their eyes scanning the tree line, their ears straining for any sign of movement, any sound that might signal danger. Nick, his face grim, his hand never far from the makeshift spear he had fashioned from a broken oar, seemed most at ease with the role of protector. Emily, her gaze flickering nervously between the shadows and her sleeping son, radiated a fierce maternal protectiveness.
Just stay close, Alexa. We'll get through this.
Alexa, her nerves frayed, her senses on high alert, found it impossible to relax. Every rustle of leaves, every splash of water, every sigh of the wind sent shivers down her spine. The world seemed filled with unseen threats, with dangers lurking just beyond the reach of the flickering lamplight. As the hours crawled by, she found herself drawn back to the events of the day, replaying them in her mind, searching for answers that seemed always just out of reach.
What caused this? Where did it come from? Is there any way to stop it?
The questions circled endlessly in her mind, offering no answers, only a growing sense of dread. Just when the first faint glimmer of dawn began to paint the eastern sky, a sound pierced the pre-dawn stillness. A rustle in the undergrowth close to the boat, followed by a low growl that sent a jolt of fear through Alexa's heart.
Oh no, what was that?
She held her breath, her heart pounding against her ribs, her eyes straining to penetrate the darkness. The sound came again, closer this time, a slow, deliberate movement that spoke of something large, something hungry, something closing in on them. Terror, cold and sharp, gripped her. She wanted to scream, to run, to do anything but sit there in the darkness, waiting for whatever lurked out there to find them. But something, some primal instinct for survival, kept her frozen in place. The screen fades to black.